Let me begin. Now, we often hear the phrase, the new normal, to define periods that follow economic tumult. I think people just use it because it makes us feel better. But that phrase inadequately captures the complexity of this moment. The new disorder more aptly describes the large destructive dynamics which create the context within which we operate. So it's being propelled by a set of precipitating factors, economy bending forces. The pandemic itself has reset the context for regional, national competitiveness by upending global supply chains and triggering a new era of inflationary pressures, inflating the prices of many goods, exacerbating what was already a housing affordability crisis. And a run-up in the stock market and real estate prices has increased the volume of private capital that's seeking investable projects, which in the US is worsening the housing affordable crisis as investors buy up swaths of rental housing. Beyond inflation, the pandemic is accelerating remote work. Workers in a vast array of occupations were instructed clearly to work from home. Overnight, tens of millions of people in major cities around the world went from commuting to central business districts, financial districts, and meeting in person to living on Zoom, and frankly, a dizzying array of communication and collaborative platforms. Downtowns became ghost towns in an instant, triggering negative second-order effects on restaurants, service businesses, transit ridership, and local taxes. Beyond remote work, the pandemic has ushered and accelerated a new era of digital commerce and teleservices. The pandemic showed that nearly everything, from cars to electronics, groceries to prescription drugs, can be ordered online and arrive just in time. The phenomenon is altering the use of land and driving a form of warehouse sprawl. Macro-fulfillment centers located at the periphery of metropolitan areas and micro-fulfillment centers taking over vacant storefronts and even former shopping malls to enable 15-minute delivery. Its surge is pushing many local retailers or punishing many local retailers that have fragile finances and few ties to the mainstream banking system. In New York City, it is claimed that a 3,000 square foot continuously stocked micro-fulfillment center can either serve or replace 1 square mile of dozens of small storefront bodegas. Unless we act, just-in-time consumerism could exact a brutal toll on what we love about cities and towns, distinctive neighborhoods that give entrepreneurs the ability to offer multiple choices in goods, services, food, and amenities, and build wealth for themselves and their communities. But the forces accelerating cities today are not limited to those unleashed or accelerated by the pandemic. Changes that have been decades in the making are now reaching critical mass. The maturation of next-generation technologies, Internet of Things, robotics, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, genomics, machine learning, it's redefining the very nature of work, and it's fundamentally altering the skills our workers need to succeed. These technologies permeate all sectors of the economy. They alter what we even mean by the tech sector, and they give small startups advantages, interestingly, over long-established companies. Climate change has reached a point of no return, and most cities around the world actually, today, exacerbate carbon emissions due to the dirty sources of their energy, the excessive level of dependence on cars for intra-city mobility, and the low energy efficiency of their buildings. They also bear the brunt of climate change due to the consequences that extreme weather has for urban populations and urban infrastructure. Next thing, to further complicate matters, investments policy changes at the global, national, and state levels set new parameters for the economic positioning of cities around the world. In the US, and this is just a short list, These changes include the electrification of the auto sector, which will change the relationship between our countries, Ontario, Michigan, Ohio, the greening of the nation's energy supply, the upgrading of the nation's infrastructure, and the boosting of domestic manufacturing capacity around medical supplies, pharmaceutical products, high tech, and beyond. The policy changes are being bankrolled by unprecedented but likely short-lived volumes of federal rescue and recovery. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, there is Russia's horrific invasion of Ukraine, which, as Mark Carney, former head Bank of England, Canada, recently contended, could leave a bigger mark than the pandemic, triggering, as it already has, volatility in energy and commodity markets, reinforcing deglobalizing dynamics, and intensifying what is almost an existential struggle between autocracies and democracies. So we've got some hard questions here, and infrastructure has to be in the service of answering them. Will supply chain issues inspire companies to manufacture more domestically, reversing years of globalization that held down wage and price growth? Which cities are going to be winners? Which are going to be losers in the rapid electrification of the auto sector? This has set off a scramble in the US across states to be the center of battery production. How will cities more generally, provinces, speed the transition to clean energy? And how is that going to affect the transportation and building sectors? Because those are the sectors that dramatically increase greenhouse gas emissions. Will the shift to an Amazon economy and this just-in-time consumerism affect the ability of small enterprises to compete on price and convenience, and the ability of nodes of commerce, our downtowns, our main streets, our commercial corridors, to thrive and survive? Can we counter it by having government, universities, hospitals, large corporations be able to use the procurement of goods and services to provide new sources of demand for small businesses? What's going to happen with remote work? If 20 or 30% of office workers now move to flexible work schedules and allowed to work from home for 2 or 3 days a week, what is that going to mean for small businesses, transit systems, local taxes that rely on employment density? Are polycentric nodes of commerce and employment now the future? What does that mean for infrastructure? Will private capital at record volumes be productive or parasitic and predatory? Who is going to own our cities? Our homes, commercial real estate, our waterfronts and amenities, residents, the public, absentee landlords, or large and small private equity firms? In short, what changes are going to be structural as the new disorder settles, and what's going to be cyclical? These are not academic questions, they're not theoretical, they're not abstract. They're already being answered by actions that different cities are taking to reposition and diversify their economies, test new approaches, unlock hidden strengths, build new assets. The message is clear, and it's brutal. To paraphrase Bob Dylan, those cities not busy being born are busy dying.